The Winnipeg Jets have finally introduced Nino Niederreiter to the team, a first game against the LA Kings. And while Niederreiter didn't exactly have any points to record, he did have quite the memorable game. The Jets also scored 5 goals, but fell just short in a 6-5 shootout loss. We'll dive into this game, as well as some major trade deadline action, all coming right up on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends, and welcome to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. As always, thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform of choice, including Apple, Spotify, Google, Megaphone, Odyssey, and YouTube. Doing so is always free of charge and ensures you never miss another episode, but most of all, we just really love and appreciate your support. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more and visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn right now to get started. Now, like I said at the top of the episode, the Jets obviously just played the Kings. Didn't exactly go as well as the Jets were hoping for. Winnipeg kind of got caught on, a penalty kill mistake, a couple of, tip deflections and things on some blown coverages. We had an instance of Dylan Sandberg slipping, and unfortunately, the Jets conceded 4 goals to Anze Kopitar, and it just felt like for all of the good that Winnipeg did in this game, and, the Jets were actually pretty okay. They created a lot of offensive pressure. They had more zone cycles going. The effort was there. Josh Morrissey had a 2-goal game. Kevin Stenlund scored twice. For all of that, the Jets just kind of still got a little bit in their own way, and Hellebuyck wasn't quite at the Vezina level that we're usually used to. So, on the one hand, the loss really sucks. I guess the positive spin is that, Calgary ended up losing in overtime to the Boston Bruins, so the point gap, I think, is at 5 points right now between the Jets and Flames. But obviously, Winnipeg is very much teetering on that edge. They're only 5 points above the playoff line, which is a little bit scary for a team that was second in the division just a few weeks ago. So Winnipeg, obviously in very dire straits, and I think the doomer side of our fan base and of myself personally has definitely been feeling more of that for the past month or two. Not so much that the Jets are going to miss the playoffs for certain, but that Winnipeg really needs to smarten up and adjust course. I mean, we've seen this team really take a back step over the past several weeks. We've talked at length about it, so I don't know how much is really worth rehashing here, but all of that to say, the Jets really need to smarten up and try and figure out, what does this team look like here after Friday when the trade deadline passes, which kind of brings me to a really big discussion around the rest of how this week is going to go. We're going to talk later about some of the actual trades and how those will actually impact what Winnipeg is after, because a number of the players the Jets are still chasing for are likely involving suitors that might now be out of the races and runnings for some of these players. But in the meantime, the Jets, I think they're still consolidating and figuring out, what one of their major needs is. Niederreiter slotted into the third line this evening. He looked pretty comfortable. I think we saw that he likes to take really good close-in shots, had a couple of good scoring opportunities against Phoenix Copley, which, is always really welcome to see. He had a big hit against Sean Dirtsey. I think that brought the ire of either Alex Iafallo or Adrian Kempe. I don't exactly remember who it was, but Niederreiter had basically a 5-minute major or something from fighting, I guess it was. Although it was more of a wrestling match, if we're being honest. All that to say, the Jets were physical. I thought that they were at times fast, and Nino looks like a really good fit for this team. But you can sort of tell that at the end of the day, the Jets still need a scoring contributor to help balance out the top six. Connor Scheifele-Wheeler actually had a pretty solid game, so, despite our reservations about that unit linking up together, I thought that they were pretty decent. The second line, it was okay. I mean, we're still missing Dubois, and Lowry is just not really the kind of guy who is going to really anchor a top six unit. I think Nino really did his best to try and help elevate that unit, but the reality is Lowry just, I mean, he is a guy who's more sensible as a fourth line center, less so as somebody deputized to anchor that second line role. Honestly, if I had a choice, I might have actually looked at Morgan Barron taking over that spot instead. I think for me, Barron might be one of the more underrated Jets on this team. He's been quietly very interesting and somebody who really shows good flashes of skill mixed with good forechecking ability and a willingness to crash the net. And it feels like if you give him skill to work with, there might be something there. Kind of like David Gustafsson, right? I think Barron maybe doesn't have the elite instincts that Gustafsson has, but in terms of hard work ethic and some of the technical flair and skill that you like to see in a middle six role, Barron seems like he's really fitting in nicely there. So positive there. Now, for the rest of the game, you might be wondering about the defensive blunders. Sandberg had a really rough outing, unfortunately. Pionk was also really, really bad. And then Stanley, he was seventh defender as they dressed 11 forwards. And Logan was, really bad cross-checking penalty. I think that one resulted in a goal against, if I recall correctly. Even if it didn't, just not really a necessary penalty to take at all. And I just see not much of a future there. But, Stanley is evidently very much being talked about as a trade piece, and it sounds like, according to Friedman, a number of teams are talking about him. So I imagine by the end of Friday, Stanley will be on the move. I think the biggest question is who else and what else will be on the way out. So we'll talk about all of that in just a little bit. Before we go any further, though, I do want to shout out our friends and partners at Indeed. No matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field or the ice, in this case for hockey, you're looking for, a team of MVPs. And just like that team of MVPs that we're watching with the Jets, you need those in your office too. If you're hiring, that's why you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't have to pay. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites hunting for the candidates with the right qualifications and skills, you need one hiring partner that can help you do it all. Indeed partners with you on every step of the process, helping you find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed's Instant Match assessments and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates with resumes on Indeed that match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. You can only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. So, again, Indeed offers great customer service because they know that when you're looking for the best candidates, you're not going to just pay for anyone. I think, one of the most important things, though, with Indeed and what makes it such a really attractive service to me is that it delivers 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined. You really can't go wrong with one of the most popular job hiring services out there. I've actually used Indeed myself when I was, looking to apply to a number of job positions. It was super easy, super straightforward. And you can start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer is valid through March 31st. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon to claim your $75 credit right now. Again, that is before March 31st. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions to apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us on this conversation about Winnipeg versus LA. We talked about the Jets having an okay game, certainly a better effort than some of the other games that they've played recently, but still kind of fell short and lost. Not great for the standings, if we're being honest, but fun debut for Nino Niederreiter and some highlights from Josh Morrissey and a number of other players even if maybe Hellebuyck wasn't quite as sharp as we'd like, and some of the defenders kind of blew some coverages. But it is what it is. In the meantime, though, the NHL has been really active in the trade market, and we'll be talking about trade deadline stuff all throughout the rest of the week. But the rest of the Locked On NHL Network will be doing the same on their podcasts. The NHL deadline is Friday, March 3rd, and you can join us live on the Locked On NHL YouTube channel from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern as our Locked On hosts break down the biggest deals from across the league. You can follow Locked On, of course, on YouTube or all of your favorite podcasting platforms. Locked On NHL is available for you every day because it is your team every day. Now, circling back to the Jets, obviously, Winnipeg is trying to do something. We don't really know what yet, but Nino Niederreiter is just the first of what may be multiple acquisitions, hoping for a big day. But like I said, the Jets are in on a couple of players that a number of teams were chasing. Timo Meier was one of the big ones. That did not pan out. One of the other players, though, is Jakob Chychrun. And Chychrun has a number of suitors. Names like Columbus have been bandied about. We've also heard something about the Senators briefly. The Oilers were in on him. Who else? LA was in on him. And now some of those suitors have actually backed out because they've already got their guy. The Oilers traded for Mattias Ekholm, exchanging a pretty big package for Ekholm, one that I was kind of like a little bit surprised for, or a little bit surprised by. So basically, you got Ekholm in exchange for Tyson Barrie, Reed Schaefer, a 2023 first-round pick, and a fourth-round pick. And going with Ekholm back the other way was a 2024 sixth-rounder for reasons, I guess. This, for me, is kind of an expensive package for like a guy who is essentially a second-pairing defender. I don't even know if Ekholm's puck movement ability is all that elite anymore. Defensively, I don't even know if he's like where he used to be. I think he's definitely tailed off as he started to age. For the Oilers, I guess it makes okay sense. Maybe the price for Chychrun was just way too much for Edmonton to really stomach, and that's why they sort of backed off. But Chychrun, for me, is obviously the much better player and somebody that I think really would have been a great fit for that back end that really prizes mobility and offensive upside over defensive stability. The Kings were also in on him, but just recently, within the past couple of hours as I'm recording this, they have actually traded for Gavrikov from the Columbus Blue Jackets. They've also picked up Jonas Korpisalo. Going back the other way, we know that there's at least a first-round pick of some sort, and Jonathan Quick, of course, apparently is being sent back. So that was fascinating. Very tough news, if we're being honest, for Quick, because he was actually on the flight with all of his teammates heading back to LA when he got the news. I'm sure that, having spent his entire career with LA, it was very difficult to hear the news. So like on a personal level, it really does suck. It sort of has those similar vibes of when that story about Gallant with the whole taxi thing broke. That story obviously didn't have quite the same circumstances, and it turns out the Panthers weren't really as much of the villains as they were made out to be. But here, yeah, this one is just a really tough one, and I'm sure that was not an easy return trip. It sounds like Quick is pretty pissed, which you'd imagine so. I mean, the Kings are finally back on the playoff march. They just beat the Jets. Things were really riding high, and suddenly you find yourself moving to the Blue Jackets, who are, unfortunately for him, bottom feeders. So Gavrikov, for me, I really feel, again, is not the player and the top-level defender that I really would have chased. I think he's probably in that Ekholm tier nowadays, maybe even a lesser player. But, for the Jets, all of this is really good because Chychrun's basically sitting right there now. Winnipeg is one of the last teams that's really going to have the sort of assets and cap space to really make a play. And intriguingly, both Chychrun and Bjugstad were scratched together, which, maybe means that the Jets are actually about to do a multiplayer trade here. You can imagine this would probably involve one of the big prospects in Lucius or Lambert, maybe another Chisholm type defender or a Heinola, and then a first rounder or two, probably some kind of a roster player. I mean, we're talking a big, big package here. Now, theoretically, could you fit in Schmaltz or something instead of Bjugstad? Maybe. But I think the salary would really have to work out, and I doubt the Yotes are really planning to take back salary. So maybe this is a deal in which Logan Stanley gets included. I would probably move Stanley separately because I feel like you could fill a different need doing that, maybe a pick of some sort or a forward player. I don't really know. We're going to wait and see how that one shakes out. But all of this to say, the Chychrun deal should be coming pretty soon, and it may not be all that shocking if it is to Winnipeg. Now, like I said, there were some other deals that occurred in the meantime. We'll talk about those and how the market continues to shake out for the Jets. But before we go any further, I want to shout out our friends and partners at FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000 with bonus bets when your first bet doesn't win. All you have to do is download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on everything from money lines to point spreads to even the number of threes drained. I don't really follow basketball myself, but of course the whole LeBron James scoring race and the chase for history continues to be super impressive. He's already broken the record. Now it's up to him to set how far he wants his career scoring to go and ultimately how to rewrite the history books. So you can place a bet on that if you want. You can also bet on things like who the next champion might be, whether it's the Celtics or somebody else. Or maybe you still love Steph Curry and you want to bet that he's going to continue to be one of the most elite three shooters in the league. Whatever you're interested in, you can win even more by combining your bets for a bigger chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. Don't miss this chance to get your no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. Obviously, we're taking a look at Winnipeg and the NHL trade market, which has continued to evolve around the Jets. Winnipeg itself hasn't really been super active, but they picked up Nino Niederreiter, and it sounds like they're doing even more to try and make some acquisitions. We'll see who that is by Friday, but in the meantime, some of the biggest deals have continued to go down. We've seen Patrick Kane traded to the New York Rangers in exchange for a second rounder and a fourth rounder, plus a number of smaller contracts and things, basically to balance out the cap and books. For me, this trade, obviously, I'm not really a big Kane fan, and at this stage of his career, I really have no idea what level of player he even is now. Maybe like a third line middle six scorer. For the Rangers, I mean, it's a big sniper who you can put on your power play and basically just ask him to shoot. That's all you really need him to do anyways. So if New York's goal, I guess, is to load up with as many aging, finishers as possible, they're doing a great job of it so far with Kane and Tarasenko joining, guys like Panarin and Zibanejad. So interesting team, definitely getting up there in years. And they seem to be going all in, as the rest of the East is wont to do, as it's been a huge nuclear arm race, as all of the top Eastern teams have really been loading up. Another trade that we saw earlier today involves the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Washington Capitals. The Leafs have exchanged Rasmus Sandin in exchange for Eric Gustafsson, and I think there was supposed to be a pick involved there. I thought I remembered a first rounder of some sort, although Spotrac hasn't actually updated that part yet, so Sandin for Gustafsson and a pick is very interesting for both teams. I think the Maple Leafs are really doing smart trades so far. They acquired Luke Schenn for a third rounder. They've already done the Ryan O'Reilly deal. Eric Gustafsson will probably be a very easy fit into their offensive blue line plans. Like I said, everyone is really loading up. And from the Caps, actually, they've traded away Marcus Johansson to the Minnesota Wild. Minnesota also picked up Gustav Nyquist. I mean, they've basically been trading third and fourth round picks, really low end picks here to try and do budget chopping, kind of like the Jets do. But in terms of where a lot of the movement is, it's all out east. The Eastern Conference has been making the biggest moves, the most forward acquisitions, the real goal scoring changes. So all I can say is if you're a fan of an Eastern Conference team and your team hasn't picked up a Timo Meier or something, I'm sorry for you, because there's a good chance that your squad's about to get curb stomped in the postseason. For the Jets, now is the time to kind of be a little bit patient. I think this is actually a really ideal situation. If you're shovel day off, who really likes to wait until the last second to make some acquisitions? Maybe Chychrun's price comes down. Maybe JVR is exchanged for like a fifth rounder or something. Anything is possible. We're hearing Brock Besser or JT Miller to the Pens. So much is happening. Which all of this movement is good for the Jets because the prices are coming down. And if you're Winnipeg waiting until the last second, that can only mean good things if you want to scoop up a few budget players who bring some noticeable impact to really fortify your middle six. But hopefully, the Jets get a big upgrade from somewhere and can consolidate some of the existing assets into more efficient uses of cap space, if you catch my drift. Now, we'll talk about whatever that is and what it looks like for the Jets over the next several days. But for tonight's episode, that is going to be all the time that we have. Again, like I said, thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. Be sure to make your second listen Game to Game NHL. It brings you every moment, every top performance, and every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. You can follow Game to Game on Locked On NHL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your favorite podcasts. My name is Harrison Lee. I'm the host of Locked On Jets. I thank you so much for joining us tonight for tonight's episode. That'll be all the time that we have. We will see you here back tomorrow. And as always, thanks for listening. Have a great night, and go Jets go.